The public discourse is saturated with obsolete threats, missile silos, carrier strike groups. This is a deliberate misdirection. The kinetic cost of peer-to-peer conflict is prohibitive. An archaic calculus of attrition. The real war, the systemic war, is being waged in a domain you cannot see. The primary vector is silence. The central nervous system of the Western-led order is not its military, but its data flow. According to risk assessments by strategic institutes like RUSI and CSIS, a handful of choke points, undersea cable landing stations, and satellite uplink nodes represent a catastrophic single point of failure for the entire global financial and military apparatus. The objective of an asymmetric actor is not to win a declared war. It is to create a blind leviathan, a superpower that cannot see its assets, cannot move its currency, and cannot coordinate its fleets is neutralized. It becomes a panicked beast, thrashing in the dark, ripe for systemic collapse. This is not warfare. It is strategic sabotage with plausible deniability. The severing of these data arteries triggers an immediate solvency crisis. Not a market correction, a full-stop liquidity event. High-frequency trading halts, SWIFT and Fedwire go dark. A launch-on warning protocol is rendered useless. This is the blueprint. Turn the system's greatest asset, its hyperconnectivity, into its most fatal liability. The goal is not destruction, it is paralysis. The pivot to asymmetric escalation is not a choice made from a position of strength. It is a mathematical certainty dictated by weakness. When a hegemonic power applies existential pressure, the conventional protocol of de-escalation becomes a synonym for surrender. The target actor is presented with two options: capitulation or a strategic pivot. The new protocol selects the pivot. This is not random violence. It is a kinetic cost-benefit analysis. The war in Ukraine is the primary case study. Ukraine cannot win a conventional war of attrition against Russia. Therefore, it does not try. The objective is not to destroy the Russian army, but to bankrupt the Russian state. It is a solvency crisis engineered by force. The strategy is explicit. According to the Kyiv Post, a stated Ukrainian goal is to inflict 50,000 lethal losses per month on Russian forces to make the war unbearable. This is not a military metric. It is an economic one. It's a direct attack on Russia's manpower solvency, designed to drain their most critical resource faster than it can be replaced. This manpower drain is the kinetic vector for a political liability. Analysis from institutions like RUSI confirms that a protracted, high-casualty war is the primary domestic threat to the Kremlin's political solvency. The state's legitimacy is predicated on stability, not endless mobilization. Ukraine is weaponizing casualties to trigger a political cascade failure. Weakness forces this pivot. With no viable path to conventional victory, the only rational move is to identify the hegemon's unique systemic liability and attack it directly. Ukraine's weakness is the very accelerant that forces it to target Russia's political solvency. This isn't a flaw in the system, it is the system's new operating protocol. The central mechanism driving this asymmetric protocol is the economics of lethality. The math is irrefutable. Analysts at the Royal United Services Institute, or RUSI, have quantified the new battlefield balance sheet. A modern main battle tank is a capital asset valued at over $5 million. The instrument of its liquidation is frequently a first-person view drone, a kinetic tool with a manufacturing cost of approximately $500. This is not a balanced exchange. It is a calculated strategy of economic annihilation. The cost-to-kill ratio has collapsed to a degree previously unimaginable. For every $1 million a state actor invests in conventional armor, an opposing force needs to spend only $100 to achieve asset neutralization. This creates an unsustainable burn rate for the conventionally superior power, turning its expensive arsenal from a core strength into a systemic liability, a field of high-value targets awaiting low-cost liquidation. This phenomenon is termed the democratization of violence. The technological and financial barriers to entry for projecting lethal state-level force have been effectively erased. A non-state actor or a weaker state can now acquire the means to neutralize a superpower's most advanced platforms via commercial, off-the-shelf technology. The solvency of a conventional military is no longer guaranteed by the size of its budget, but threatened by its very expense. The travel warnings are not random. The advisory alerts for 8 countries are not isolated events of local chaos. Source number 4. They are markers. They designate the emergence of gray zones, geopolitical petri dishes, where new protocols of asymmetric conflict are being beta tested. These are not the front lines. They are the laboratories. Analysts at institutions like CSIS note that these zones are selected for their inherent systemic fragility. A nation like South Africa, for example, becomes a proxy laboratory, not for a direct military takeover, but to stress test the social, economic, and logistical architecture of a Western-aligned regional power. The goal is to collect data. At what point does infrastructure fail? How fast can social cohesion be dissolved? It is pre-conflict reconnaissance on a systemic scale. These gray zones serve as staging grounds. The tactics refined there, from engineered bank runs to precision infrastructure sabotage, are not meant to stay there. They are modular components of the larger asymmetric escalation protocol. They are designed for export. The true targets are the core solvency pillars of the hegemon: its supply chains, its financial liquidity, its political stability. Therefore, observing instability in a place like Canada or a regional African power is a critical error if viewed in isolation. It is a symptom, not the cause. It is the controlled demolition of a single building to test the explosive charges required to bring down the entire financial district. This is the blueprint for distributed systemic warfare. Use the periphery to develop the kinetic tools to trigger a solvency cascade at the core. The nuclear deterrent is now the primary systemic liability. The governing protocol, according to analysts at CSIS, is launch on warning. This is not a choice. It is a mathematical function designed to prevent a decapitation strike. It mandates a full-scale retaliatory launch the instant incoming missiles are detected before they impact. The protocol's critical dependency is data solvency, the absolute integrity of its sensor network. This is where asymmetric escalation creates a catastrophic failure point. A low kinetic cost cyber attack does not need to destroy a single silo. It only needs to blind the radar. This generates the fog of digital war. To the commander in the bunker, a black screen is indistinguishable from a successful first strike. The protocol forces a binary choice. Assume a glitch and risk the annihilation of your entire command structure, or launch based on the absence of data, triggering global thermonuclear war. The adversary uses a few lines of code to turn the hegemon's ultimate weapon into a self-destruct mechanism. The calibration shot will not be a missile. It will be a signal. Within the next 12 months, expect a non-kinetic, attribution-impossible event targeting a Tier 1 data center cluster. The objective is not destruction, but a 72-hour paralysis of a core economic node. This is a test of the system's resilience and, more importantly, its political response time under ambiguity. The vector will be a compound attack, a minor physical disruption at an unsecured electrical substation, amplified by a dormant logic bomb in the grid's control system. It will be officially diagnosed as a cascading equipment failure. Plausible deniability is the primary feature of this conflict protocol. This is not a declaration of war. It is an actuarial assessment executed kinetically. The adversary is measuring the solvency cost of a single targeted strike against the West's most critical undefended liability, its total dependence on centralized data architecture. The travel warnings are not the risk, they are the echo of a risk that has already been priced in by the opposition. The event will demonstrate with mathematical certainty that the kinetic cost to paralyze the hegemonic power is orders of magnitude lower than the cost to defend it. It is the launch-on warning phase of a global solvency crisis. The blueprint is active.